Because of the nature of the message this morning, I thought we would do something a little bit different and have the bulk of the silence after it. And you'll see why as we go along. Have you ever noticed how Christmas feels more like a night holiday or holy day if you prefer? Think about it a minute. I don't know about y'all, but for me, so much of Advent and Christmas just feel more natural if the events happen after dark. Partly this is just a practical thing, a reflection of the school or work schedule in which all of us spend so much of our lives. When else are you supposed to gather with family and friends and celebrate, or go to holiday concerts, or watch the Christmas specials on TV when you're a kid? In the evening, at night, or on the weekend is when our free time is. So that's mainly when we do Christmassy things. And partly it's seasonal. Christmas, Hanukkah, Yule, Kwanzaa, Diwali, all of them are festivals of light. They take place around the time of the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, when the nights are stop getting longer and the days start getting longer. These festivals of light harken back to what the historian William Manchester once famously called a world lit only by fire. Among other things, they celebrate light emerging from the womb of darkness, the triumph of good over evil, the triumph of love over hate. What could be more appropriate as a description of Christmas, especially after it became common to celebrate Jesus' birth on the 25th of December? Christina Rossetti captures the symbology perfectly, doesn't she? Jesus probably wasn't born in an actual winter, but it was a symbolic winter. In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Earth stood hard as iron, water like a stone. Snow had fallen, snow on snow, snow on snow. In the bleak midwinter long ago. And partly it's a matter of what we might call our mythic imagination of the nativity story. We all know how the traditional narrative goes. Joseph and a very pregnant Mary arrive in Bethlehem, usually late in the day. An increasingly worried Joseph leads Mary around on their little donkey up and down the streets of the village. But there's nowhere for them to stay because Bethlehem is stuffed to the gills with people who've come there for the Roman census. Finally, Joseph finds a kind-hearted innkeeper who allows them to stay in his stable. And that's where Jesus was born, on the very night after they arrived in town. Of course, the truth is that we don't have any real idea of what time of year Jesus was born, or even what time of day. The traditional narrative I just described has a lot more to do with centuries of European folklore than it does with the New Testament. But there are two stories in the New Testament Gospels that are associated with Jesus' birth and infancy, which do take place at night. The first one, from Luke 2, is about the shepherds and the angels, and it takes place on the night of the same day on which Jesus is born. The other is this one from the 2nd chapter of Matthew. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. When Herod had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea. For thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not least among the princes of Judah. For out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold, and frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. I'll make some quick observations about the story of the Magi, or the wise men, whichever name you prefer to call them. Many of us have this idea that the wise men followed the star all the way from their home country or countries to Jerusalem, and that it somehow vanished at that point. Certainly that was the folklore by the middle of the 19th century. You know the Christmas carol, We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. Oh, star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. But if you look at what Matthew actually says, rather than what we tend to assume it says, this is the picture that emerges. In the Greek of Matthew's gospel, the verb tense is very clear. We saw his star, and we came to pay homage to him. Two actions in the past. We saw, we came. Both of them completed. The traditional rendering that they saw the star in the east, though it goes all the way back to William Tyndale's translation of the New Testament in 1526, is almost certainly incorrect. At its rising is better. Or you could even translate the Greek phrase as in the dawn. Among other things, the Magi were astrologers, as the original audience of Matthew's gospel would know. So it's possible that we're meant to infer that the only place that the Magi saw the star that first time might have been on a horoscope. God meets us where we are. And that's how it was with the Magi. You don't have to share their belief in astrology to know that. Whatever they saw and wherever they saw it, the Magi interpreted it as indicating the birth of a new king of the Jews. So they went to the logical place to find word of the new king, Jerusalem. And when they arrived there, apparently nobody knew what they were talking about. Now this suggests several things. First, the star wasn't the sort of celestial event that just anybody could see. If it were, then the people in Jerusalem would have known all about it. Not to mention the ancient Babylonians and Chinese, or modern astronomers and biblical scholars. Also, if the Magi had been following the star all along, it would have led them straight to Bethlehem. They wouldn't have stopped in Jerusalem, which let Herod know that he had a potential rival. And finally, the only place in Matthew 2 where the Magi are explicitly stated to be following the star is after they leave Herod, not before. What all of this says to me is that we often aren't given the whole journey ahead of us mapped out. We learn in stages. It's like the 4 sons that are mentioned in the Haggadah, which is the text that you follow at the Passover Seder. You give each person what he or she can absorb. If you have to, you even ask the question for them. What is it that Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount? If you know how to give good gifts to your children, won't God also know how to give good gifts to you? Especially when you ask. God gives us only the insights we are capable of absorbing at any given time. So it was with the Magi. Now let's talk a bit about the star. I could allegorize the Star of Bethlehem as symbolizing our higher goals and aspiration, the better angels of our nature, in Lincoln's memorable phrase, but that would be a commonplace. Instead, let's go in a slightly different direction. I'd like to draw a connection to something which I learned about quite recently. Most of us, perhaps all of us, will probably be familiar with the concept of triggers. Events or other stimuli which cause negative emotional reactions in us. Particularly if we've undergone some kind of stressful or traumatic event or process. Well, according to one definition I found, there's a term called glimmer, which is the opposite of a trigger. Glimmers are those micro moments in your day that make you feel joy, happiness, peace, or gratitude. Once you train your brain to be on the lookout for glimmers, these tiny moments will appear more and more. The concept of glimmers has its roots in polyvagal trauma therapy. And such stimuli, according to Deb Dana, a clinical social worker who coined the term, glimmers aren't grand experiences. Instead, they're small and fleeting moments that work to reshape our parasympathetic nervous system in very gentle ways. Once you train your brain to look for such micro moments, you start noticing them more often. As we seek, so shall we find. That is the line from the old song by Blues Traveler, isn't it? Our old friend, the Apostle Paul, and if Cousin Mary Bond was here, I would tell her to hold on to her horses. Paul has something similar to say in Philippians 4:8. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think on these things. We used to sing a choir anthem about this passage, and I can see Mary remembers.
Oh, sure.
But going beyond that, it's really a matter of the self-fulfilling prophecy. One of my favorite British comedies they used to show on public TV in this state is As Time Goes By. A few of you have seen it. It starred the late Geoffrey Palmer and one of the most famous currently living Quakers named Judi Dench. As a couple who had once had a brief romance, but inadvertently lost touch, and then were reunited 38 years later. In the third episode of the entire series, Dench, who played Jean Pargeter, is remarking unfavorably upon the change in Lionel Hardcastle, Palmer's character, after all those years apart. She begins by telling him, "You used to be such an optimist." Lionel says, "Are you sure?" "Yes, you used to believe that lovely things would happen to us, and they always seemed to." Lionel says, "I expected them to, I suppose." And now, Lionel says, now is now. And Jean says, oh, let's go. Where? I thought we could go to the cemetery and cheer ourselves up. Wow, talk about Debbie Downer. That is the expression, isn't it? But that's precisely Jean's complaint, that the years of loneliness and separation have hardened Lionel's character and attitudes. As we seek, so shall we find. Several days ago, I attended a Moravian Christmas love feast. In fact, it was here at Fairview for the first time since before Joyce died in 2020. We used to go to them together. And if you've ever been to a Christmas love feast, you know that they sing a couple of hymns that are usual to their church, but not common outside it. The more famous of them is Morning Star, which is sung to a melody composed by Francis Florentine Hagen, who was born in 1815 here in what we now call Old Salem. My favorite verse goes like this. Thy glad beams, thou morning star, cheer the nations near and far. Thy glad beams, thou morning star, cheer the nations near and far. Thee we own, Lord alone, Lord alone, thee we own, our great Savior, God's dear Son. I always liked the sound of cheering the nations near and far. Don't you?
Yes.
It's so hopeful and positive. So what I'm going to ask all of us to do during the silence is to think about our glimmers. Those things which make us feel positive, which bring us joy, which make us feel joy, happiness, peace, or gratitude. Feel free to share them with everyone if you feel so led. I'll start by mentioning a couple of mine. I particularly love two scenes in It's a Wonderful Life, which I watch every Christmas Eve. The first is when George's friends, Bert and Ernie, whom I am sure are the namesakes of the characters on Sesame Street. They stand outside in the pouring rain to serenade him and Mary on their wedding night. And the second one comes at the end of the movie when Mary comes rushing in, accompanied by all the people whom George has helped over the years, expressing their gratitude and their love for him by bringing him the money he needs to keep from being arrested on Potter's trumped-up charges of bank fraud. What is it that Clarence wrote in the copy of Tom Sawyer he left for George among all the cash donations? Remember, no man is a failure who has friends. Acts of kindness, acts of love by the people I love are glimmers for me. If we can do this, if we can focus on what brings us joy, we'll not only be training our brains to have a more positive outlook, we'll also be more able and more likely to act in accordance with this quote from Spirituality for Justice. Jesus entered the world as a poor and vulnerable outcast, his family driven from their home by the violence of empire. In this holy season, may we remember the families of our own time who flee terror and hide from persecution at the hands of unjust rulers. May God grant us eyes to recognize Christ's story in theirs, and hearts brave enough to rise in their defense against persecution. Amen.